welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I'm your host, Jessica, and I am here with Jen DeLuca about her book, Ghost Business, which was a lot of fun. I was actually just saying to Jen that I'm very picky when it comes to rom-coms, although I've been reading a few more lately that I've really liked, and this is definitely one of them. I really enjoyed this one. It is actually the second in a series about an area called Boneyard Key, Florida, which I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about in a second. And it's the story about Sophie, who is a huge lover of her hometown. And oh, by the way, it's a haunted town. That's kind of important, right?
Yeah.
And she gives ghost tours, and then this young guy who is extremely infuriatingly attractive comes to town to give his own ghost tours, except they have nothing to do with the actual ghosts that live there. It's all theatrical. And he is also trying to prove his father, who's a controlling CEO, wrong, and sparks fly. And it's really, like I said, it was really fun. I really liked it. I enjoyed the growing relationship between the characters. So I guess first of all, welcome, Jen, and tell us a little bit about where the town of Boneyard Key came from and where Sophie and Tristan came from.
Well, first off, hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. So Boneyard Key it came about in sort of a weird way to me. I have written 4 stories set in the world of the Renaissance Festival. And so after I had written those 4 books, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to write next. And I've always loved ghost stories. It's just sort of always been one of my favorite things to read. So I thought it would be fun to write a ghost story. And so I was coming up with a bunch of different ideas and angles to come at it. And I thought, well, at this point, I can either just start sending a whole bunch of different stories to my agent that are all ghost stories, and she would say, stop sending me ghost stories. Or I could kind of create a place where they could all happen, and it could kind of be a sort of a shared world sort of thing, and I could write a whole bunch of different ghost stories if I wanted to. So I lived in Florida for 25 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the idea of tourist towns and kind of the ebb and flow of those towns being crowded and those towns being empty and depending very much on tourism. And especially the towns that are a little bit further flung from, say, like Disney World and stuff like that. So you really have to compete for tourist dollars. And so I really just love the idea of just this kind of kitschy, small town in Florida that's just like, yep, we're haunted. Come buy a t-shirt with a ghost on it. Go on a ghost tour. Spend your money here. So it all just kind of came together, and I called it Boneyard Key.
And where is it located, if you were to put it on a map?
On a map, geographically, it's very similar. I took a lot of the geography from Cedar Key, Florida, which is kind of it's on the west coast, a little bit north, kind of near the Big Bend area. So it's north of Tampa, but not quite as north as like Pensacola and all of that. So it's like I said, it's right near the Big Bend area of Florida on the western side is where Cedar Key is. And so I kind of, in my mind, I put Boneyard Key kind of similar to that. In the first book, Haunted Ever After, I was a little more vague with its placement because I was honestly not entirely sure. I knew I had it on the Gulf side, but I wasn't sure exactly where in my head. But it was sort of, I always kind of had it north of Tampa-ish. And then just there's so much of Cedar Key's geography that I kind of incorporated into Boneyard Key as far as there's a little island off the coast with a cemetery that's still there in Cedar Key, Florida, that I really wanted to incorporate because I just thought it was a beautiful haunted idea. That I just kind of decided to just completely steal that area of Florida, and then that's where Boneyard Key is. But there's a little bit of other places in Florida that I love that I just kind of stuck into a blender to create Boneyard Key.
Sure. And I really liked it. It was a place I would totally vacation.
Okay.
Yes. So Sophie, it was really interesting because, like I said, this is, and it could be read as a standalone, or you could read the other book, Haunted Ever After, before. But from, just doing a quick sort of Goodreads research about Haunted Ever After, and then reading the beginning of this book, you apologize to the people who thought Sophie and Theo were going to end up together. So where did Tristan come from?
Well, so this was fun for me, I guess. But so when I wrote Haunted Ever After, I had already planned ghost business. I already had my next idea was going to be rival ghost tours. So it was the idea of Sophie and her little hometown ghost tour that's very accurate and is telling, the true stories of the people who have lived and died in Boneyard Key, contrasted with, some guy coming to town with his, corporate, kind of more corporate approach to a ghost tour where he's got multiple tours in multiple cities. They all tell the same stories because they're the ones that play well to audiences, and he's just out to entertain the folks. He's not trying to be historically accurate. So I wanted to write about that contrast. But then what happened in Haunted Ever After, as I was drafting it and as I was revising it, was I made that kind of romance novel mistake where I made two people have a conversation, and that telegraphs to the reader, these people are next, their story is next. And I didn't mean to do that. I really didn't. I just wanted to have I wanted to have Sophie and Theo have a little bit of a tension, have a little bit of a spat, and then resolve it and become friends. But as Haunted Ever After was released, I had so many people tag me on Instagram and ask me, send me DMs and say, oh, I can't wait for Sophie and Theo's book, Sophie and Theo, Sophie and Theo. And I was like, oh no, that's not what's happening at all. And I felt terrible that I felt like, oh no, I'm leading people on. But I was like, I really hope that they hang in there and fall in love with Tristan, because at that point I was writing Ghost Business and I'd really fallen in love with Tristan. He's a completely different person from Theo. And I just, I was just like, I hope people will still talk to me after this book comes out.
Yeah, and again, I really liked both of the main characters. It's very funny to me that, you had sort of that already in mind, because I really I felt very akin to Sophie, and just sort of her love of not only just her town but also the history, and the fact that yeah, there are real ghosts here, and they're gonna get pissed off if you call them, I don't know, was it Annabelle or whatever.
Right.
Tristan just, and it is really funny, because he wears the top hat. He's very theatrical. But also I liked him. I really enjoyed the fact that you had just this really open, bisexual male main character,
Mm-hmm.
which usually if you do see that in rom-coms, it's the female character is, you don't see a lot of that. And he talks about having dated men before, and
Mm-hmm.
he was a lot of fun to read. His dad sounds terrible.
His dad is that stereotypical business-minded dad, and that's his life, and he figures his son needs to do the same thing. And that I don't want to say is like a stereotypical thing to do in fiction. You've always got that kind of, overpowering dad that wants the son to follow in his footsteps. Tristan is very much, I say in the acknowledgments of this book, very much based on the Gilmore Girls character Logan Huntsberger, where I say, what if Logan Huntsberger was a bisexual theater kid who decided to run ghost tours instead of follow along in his dad's footsteps. So Logan in Gilmore Girls is very much that kind of free-spirited guy, but his dad kind of brings him to heel, and he ends up in the corporate world. And so I took Tristan in a slightly different direction, and let him want to be his own person a little bit more.
I read that, and I have to say, I watched the first few seasons of Gilmore
Okay.
Girls, but I did not get up to Logan. Were
Oh,
there
okay.
any other inspirations for Tristan? He was super, super fun, and now I'm like, oh, should I be watching more of this?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the Logan. I like the Logan character personally. I know there, everybody is team this or team that, and I was pretty team Logan. I'm also kind of team Jess as far as Gilmore Girls goes. But yeah, he's a very he was very much based on Logan, just as far as his charm, because Logan is a character who could charm just about anybody. And I just kind of gave him a little bit more of a theatrical flair, and gave him a little bit more of I don't know, like I said, a little bit more of an independent spirit, because while I think the character of Logan is a really good character, he also kind of bows to his dad a little bit. And so I really wanted to kind of take that and create a little bit of a different character with him.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, he was charming and I
Hmm.
definitely fell for him. And I loved his relationship with his business partner slash
Hmm.
ex. That was a lot of fun. What about Sophie? Is she like, where did she come from? Because I know she was a background character in the first book.
Hmm. She's a supporting character in Haunted Ever After. She's, giving her ghost tour, and she's one of the, she was actually a really good way in Haunted Ever After for us to kind of learn about the town itself, because we go on her ghost tour, we learn about, different parts of the town, the history of the town and all that. So she was a really good way to kind of introduce the reader to the town and give some exposition without it being just a paragraph of bare, here's the history of the town. So I thought it was a fun way to do that, was to take the reader on a ghost tour. She was just a supporting character there. I don't really have like a specific inspiration for her the way that I did for Tristan, where I based him a little bit on Logan. I just really picture Sophie as this, she's petite, she's got this curly dark hair, and she's got almost a timid personality until you really piss her off, until there's something that's very important to her that is being threatened, which we kind of find out as she realizes that Tristan is running this competing ghost tour. And again, she's very, very sensitive to the stories of this town being told correctly. So when she and her ghost tour run into Tristan and his ghost tour, and he's telling some absolutely completely fabricated story about a pirate that never existed, she just completely loses her cool and unloads on him.
And then it goes viral
And then
and
their fight goes viral. Yeah.
which is good for both of their businesses.
It
So
is. It absolutely
yeah.
is. And Sophie is not an online person, which is something that kind of infuriates Tristan, and that becomes sort of a point of contention between the two of them and the way that they run their businesses. She's a local girl. This is a small town. It's a small tourist town. So, you come to this town for the weekend, and the Chamber of Commerce might have like a little flyer about her ghost tour. Or you go to the local coffee shop and the guy will say, "Oh, hey, the girl does ghost tours on Saturday night. You want to sign up?" That's the extent of her advertising. So that's why Tristan comes to town. He thinks there's no ghost tour here because he's researched online and found nothing. She doesn't have a website. She doesn't have an Instagram. So to him, he's like, "Oh, if there's no ghost tour here, this is a perfect place to start one." And so then he shows up in town. He's doing the recon to figure it all out, and meets this really cute girl at a bar, and then finds out she does ghost tours, and realizes that this really cute girl that he's been flirting with is suddenly his business competition. So it's a little bit of a problem for him.
I really just enjoyed all of the banter, and their interactions was a lot of fun. I like that the supernatural is there. It's not
Mhm.
like it's not necessarily central to the plot, but the plot would be missing something if that
Right.
wasn't part of it. So that was fun as well. Had you ever or would you ever want to go a little bit more supernatural into any future writings?
Oh, I would love to. I would say that Haunted Ever After might have a little bit more, it's a little bit more haunted, I guess, because a big part of Haunted Ever After is it's about Cassie and Nick, and it's about figuring out the ghost that lives in Cassie's house. So it's a little more, I would say, focused on that. Ghost business, it's more about living in this town that happens to be haunted. I am very much, like I said, I love ghost stories, but I'm not big into horror. I am a wuss when it comes to horror. So you're not going to have like walls bleeding or, any real jump scares, I don't think, in my books. But somebody described them as Scooby-Doo horror, which I was like, okay, that's accurate. That's fair. It's fun. It's a little bit fun, scary. It's like, the Haunted Mansion at Disney. It's that kind of scary, as opposed to going to keep you up at night with the lights on scary. Um, so even if I do want to delve more into more supernatural topics, which I have a couple in mind, um, I still don't think it's going to be like a keeping you up at night kind of horror.
It was definitely fun. I loved it. Who is up next in Boneyard Key?
Well, that's a really good question because I'm not entirely sure. We only have the two books under contract, so I don't have, solid plans yet, but I have what I need to do is kind of sit down with I have a lot of characters, a lot of side characters, and I have some ideas of what their story is going to be. And I kind of need to sit down and just sort of write little pages about each one and figure out how they're going to intersect, who's going to pair up with whom, who might pair up with somebody from out of town, and figure out what order their stories need to be next. Because really, I planned Haunted Ever After, and then I planned Ghost Business right after that. And then I kind of have a few more people, but I don't know exactly what their order is going to be yet. So it's a kind of a big question mark right now, which is kind of fun. That's the fun part of writing, is discovering what's going to be next.
How did you get into writing in general?
It's always been something I'm interested in. I learned to read at a really, really young age. My mom was very into books, and teaching me to read was probably one of her biggest priorities. I just remember learning to read. I don't remember a time when I couldn't read. And we were very much library people. Mom would take me to the library. The rule was I could check out as many books as I could carry. So I would have just a stack of books up to my chin that I was trying to, haul out of the library. And then I had to sit down at home and make a list of the books I checked out so we didn't lose them, which was probably a very smart thing for her to do. So I've always been reading. And then basically, as I learned how to write, I wanted to write my own stories. And so and they were very bad when I was very young because I didn't have a whole lot of life experiences. So there were a lot of stories about girls who had dogs and took naps and that kind of thing. They weren't very exciting, but so it's just always been kind of my hobby. It's just always been something that I did on the side. Even like in high school and college, I just had notebooks that I would scribble in and store, with stories. And some of them were almost more like probably journal entries, like trying to figure out my own life and doing that through creating fictional characters. So none of them were particularly readable. And then I don't know, everything just sort of evolved. It was always a hobby. And then probably I would say about 10 years ago or so, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it for real. If I'm going to actually try to become an author. And so I wrote my first romance novel because it sounded like fun. And it was the most fun I'd ever had writing something. And then I spent, I went the traditional route, spent a couple of years revising it, entering some contests, and eventually got signed with a literary agent. And then while the book that I signed with her with didn't sell, I wrote a different book, and that ended up selling, and that became my debut, which was Well Met, that came out in 2019. And now I do this full time, which kind of blows my mind. So it just basically started as a hobby, and now it's what I do.
Awesome. Well, I cannot wait to see what else you have because you are a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I really do.
All right. So once again, this was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My guest today was
Jen DeLuca. You can reach me at jendeluca.com.
And we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.